Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out Confession. Story 1. I steal from the grocery store. Sometimes when I'm at the grocery store, the bigger name brands, I like to steal things. Not because I can't afford food, but just for a rush. First I use the self-checkout line, the one where there's like 10 machines with one bored-looking cashier on the other side. Then I put the wrong product code on some produce. Like if I have $1.99 apples, I put in the code for 0.49 bananas. I also can scan one item then quickly move another through the machine and put it on the floor, so I can avoid the weight discrepancy. I forget to scan items and just leave them in the basket or cart. I don't steal too much, like maybe $5 or $10 worth, and if I get caught I can just feign ignorance because I paid for the other items. Story 2. When I was a kid I made my neighbor dump out her toy box. When I was about 10 or 12 I made my neighbor dump out her toy box in her playroom basement. And told her we should organize her toys. Well, after about 10 minutes of organizing I got bored and frustrated about the amount of work and told her I needed to go home for dinner and will be back after dinner. I never returned. The next day her mom came to our house and told my mom I told her daughter to dump her toys out. And I needed to come back and help her clean the mess up. I lied and said no I didn't. She did it herself and had nothing to do with it. Also I wouldn't have to go deal with that hot mess. The girl stopped talking to me and later I found that her dad got so mad about the mess he bagged everything up in garbage bags and made her toss all the toys. Story 3. I stole a 50 ml bottle of whiskey from an airplane. Note: the period on the title is just because this sub needs 50 characters to be able to post. So, me and my wife flew to a country with a shitty airline. They came out on their mandatory walk with the little trolley with nuts, beer, and tea. On the other aisle, 2 rows back, someone made a purchase or a fuss and it made the flight attendants to look over there for 5 seconds, leaving the trolley unguarded with their eyes. I stole a Red Label whiskey and just hid it in my jacket. I am 26 years old. Out of curiosity, will they get in any trouble for it? Because there is chaos on that airline every time I doubt they actually check inventories more than refill. Story 4. I ran a scam that caused an entire town to go obese. So before I start I will not be sharing the name of this town because it might lead to PPL finding out my name and I'm pretty sure what I did is illegal. I grew up and still live in the Netherlands. But about 10 years ago, 2012 to 2013, I did an high school exchange program in the US. Meaning I lived in a small town in America for a year and went to the local high school, senior class. On my first day there the people from the program told me about a small shop in town that sells authentic Dutch food. I didn't think much of it at first but it was nice to have a place to go to get a taste from home. About 1,5 or 2 months in I started to crave some of my favorite Dutch sweets so I decided to check out this store. Turns out, it was the real deal, the labels were even still in Dutch. So I bought some of the best stuff and a little chat with the owner of the store who was also Dutch, that's why he was selling Dutch food along with the normal stuff. He also told me nobody in town really knew about this which we both agreed was a shame. The next day during lunch I was eating one of my newly acquired sweets when one of my friends asked what it was. I gave him one of the sweets and he understandably really enjoyed it, so everyone else also wanted to try one. One of my friends liked it so much he asked if he could buy one of the bags from me. Now here's where the trouble started, because I really didn't want to part with my bag of delicious sweets. I named the high price of $10 even though it only cost me a little over $4. When asked about the high price I just made up some bullshit about shipping costs from the Netherlands. To my, and everyone's, surprise he actually went for it and gave me $10 in exchange for my bag of sweets, so I went back to the store and bought 2 new bags. This little cycle between me and him continued for a week until someone else, who I wasn't friends with but he was, also wanted to buy a bag and from there my scam was off. I started selling to many students and parents who just really enjoyed these sweets. I even joined forces with the store owner, making sure we always matched prices and keeping customer count high. Obviously some teachers and other school staff caught wind and threatened to report me, but I could easily buy their silence for a free bag of sweets. This went on for the rest of the school year. By the end I made sure all my customers knew to go to that little store after I left to keep my friend the store owner in business. Fast forward to earlier this year, there was a 10-year reunion for my class and obviously I decided to fly out and catch up with my old friends. When I arrived I first went to the store and see how it was doing. I immediately noticed that there were a lot more Dutch products than 10 years ago. The owner explained how due to my efforts back then, he was able to grow the business and people just kept on buying the food because it's that good. He did have to drop prices back to normal since the shipping costs excuse doesn't work anymore these days, but according to him that only made people want it more. At first I felt pretty proud of this, but during my time in town I started to notice a lot more people had gotten obese since I was last there. I did some digging and found out that the main cause is believed to be those Dutch sweets everyone loves. After finding this out I started to feel genuinely guilty. Because of me about 80% of this town's population got obesity. And I still feel very guilty now just thinking about it and writing this story. Though there is also a voice in the back of my mind telling me I shouldn't feel guilty because it's their own fault for eating too much of them. TLDR, I dealt overpriced Dutch sweets in an American town 10 years ago and now pretty much the entire town is obese. For all the Dutch people reading this, a list of the stuff I sold: ik handeld voedsel en stroopwafels, pepernoten, squampjes en uit Brabantse lekkernijen. Story 5. I steal Bic lighters from all of my friends' houses when I visit. It's so easy. Sometimes I'm talking to them or looking them in the eye as I pocket them. Most of my friends, or my friends' family members smoke, so they have plenty of them lying around. Especially when everyone's birthdays rolls around, I'm always the one to volunteer to set up the cake. I have a small collection of them. My friends know my username, so if they're reading this, sup dudes? Love you. Story 6. I faked bruises with makeup to get attention in school. I was in 7th grade and wanted attention from people in my class for some reason that I don't particularly remember, but I was always very theatrical and used to lie a lot. One morning I faked bruises all over my face, managed to do fake blood, and I walked to class like I was hurt. My parents didn't see it because I used to walk alone to school. I told my classmates I fell from the stairs, but I was okay. It looked so real that the principal called my parents and asked me if I was feeling safe at home. He thought my parents were beating me up. I found it funny at first, but then I felt bad for the suspicions on my parents and their reputation in my school. My mom took it as a joke. She never talked to me about it, and a little after I started going to drama classes that made my attention-seeking behavior to get better. Looking back I feel ashamed for what I did and still think about it, afraid of someone from my past remembering this episode. I hope they don't. Nobody knows the truth, maybe my mom does, but she never talked to me about it and I still feel bad. Story 7. I invited my friend to the park to have several other friends make fun of him. Several months back, I was walking home from school with two of my friends, named Keegan and Rowan. All of us are 14. As a joke, I called Rowan gay, and he got really pissed. He screamed at me, saying I'm not gay. Then charged at me, swung me around by grabbing onto my bag, then punched me in the back of my head. He then ran away to his house. I was feeling two main feelings, confusion and shock. I ran after him, told him I'm sorry, then we all went home. I got home, thought about it, and then the more I thought about it, the more I got pissed. I was so angry that he attacked me like that, and I really wish that I had punched him back. I was also super angry because he had called me gay a few times before too. We didn't talk for a few weeks after that. So the way I retaliated is by making fun of him behind his back with Keegan. We never said any of this to him, but we would make fun of him because of his weight, even though I'm the same size as him. One day Keegan had a few friends over, and all of us hung out outside. It was me, Keegan, our brothers, and the two friends, Evan, the older one, and Zach, the younger one, who were also brothers. I told Zack and Evan about Rowan, and they told me I should invite Rowan to the park, because they wanted to see what he looked like. I showed them a picture of him, but they still really wanted to see him in person. So I did. We had talked a little bit before this, so I felt that it was okay to do it. So I invited him down to the park, and the six of us walked down there to meet him. Before we got there I told Keegan to call him fat, and I told Evan to call him gay. I was feeling nervous, even though I planned all this like a complete asshole. So when we met him there, they immediately tore into him. I hardly spoke a word to him, while Keegan and Evan said terrible things while we hung out with him and talked. Why are you so fat? You're gay. Does the ground shake when you jump? They said nasty things, most of which I didn't even tell them to say. I told Keegan and Evan to stop because I was already regretting this. But they didn't stop. They kept going. Then eventually Rowan went home. I felt like a piece of garbage. It was one of the lowest things I had ever done. It's one of my biggest regrets in my life. Me and him didn't talk for about a month, until one day I called him to see if he wanted to play an online game. So we did, and we didn't speak a word about it. We acted like nothing happened. I would like to apologize, but I also wonder if he had forgotten about it. He had no idea that I told Keegan and Evan to do that. I wonder if I should apologize or just let it be forgotten. Story 8. When I was a kid in high school I stole cell phones and laptops from school premises. My mother was hooked on drugs at the time and spent her days laying on the couch blasted out of her skull. We had to live on around €25 every week to feed me, my younger sister and my mom. Weeks would go by where I wouldn't eat anything aside from school lunch 3 days a week. One day during gym class I had to go to the bathroom. I walked through this dressing room where everybody would change into their gym attire. I looked over to my left and saw a BlackBerry Torch 9800 sticking out of a pants pocket on the coat rack. I was hesitant at first, telling myself I'm not a thief, I'm not gonna stoop that low, but it was practically begging me to take it, taunting me almost. After about a minute I just told myself fuck it and took it. For some odd reason before sticking it in my underwear I remembered to turn off the sound. Good thing I did, because the first thing the guy who I stole from did was ask his buddy to call his phone so he could find it. The teacher told him that he had probably left it somewhere and said to ask about it at the Lost and Found. There I was, I had successfully stolen a phone, but I didn't have a fucking clue what I should do with it. I knew that maybe I could try and sell the thing, and I hid it under my mattress when I got home. Then, a few days later I got the phone and completely cleaned it out. People rarely used passwords back then, and if they did it would be pretty easy to crack. Something like 1234 or 0000. This time it didn't have a password, lucky me. I deleted everything off it and flushed the SIM card down the toilet. I went to the nearest pawn shop and told him that I wanted to sell my phone because I had gotten a new one. He was pretty suspicious at first and told me that he didn't buy phones without receipts. I bullshitted my way around a story where I'd lost the box and receipt while moving and totally understood why he didn't want to take that chance. I got chummy with the guy and he gave me the address of a phone store I could try. And that I did. That guy didn't ask me anything, I showed him the phone and he promptly offered me $50 for it. Mind you, this was in 2010 when a mint BlackBerry was actually worth something. I went home and I just kept looking at the €50 bill. I couldn't believe it worked. I picked up my sister and we went to McDonald's together. I bought her a Happy Meal and bought myself a large Big Mac menu. God, I felt like the king of the world in that McDonald's booth. I still have the receipt from that meal to this very day, it was such a cathartic moment. It gave me a taste of what I presumed was the good life. I started spacing out the heists to make it look like unrelated events, and it kinda worked. For 3 years I'd steal a phone or a laptop from the computer lab every few months and use the money for when times were low at home. I never told my mom about any of the money and made my sister promise me to never tell her about our little trips so McDonald's and the grocery store. It all came to a head one day when I almost got caught by a teacher literally shoving a laptop under my jacket in an empty computer lab. He asked me what I was doing and I made up a story about how I had a rash in my stomach that I was scratching and I was in the lab because I didn't want anybody to see me. He asked me to show him but I doubled down and told him that I felt threatened by him asking me to lift up my shirt. "You're making me uncomfortable, sir. I don't feel safe alone with you. Why are you asking me to take my clothes off?" Yes, I know it sounds unbelievable but there was a teacher at my school that got caught with CHLDP0RN a few months prior, so no way that this guy was gonna actually make lift up my shirt. He knew I was full of shit and still backed off. I was 16 when that happened. I decided that that was the last time I'd ever steal anything from school. It was time to get a job and stop being a deadbeat. A few weeks after this happened, my mother went into rehab after being pressured by her family and we stayed with my grandparents for a few months. I got a job at a movie theater and finally made honest money. I haven't stolen anything since, but I still feel bad about stealing the phones from the people I went to class with. I literally helped somebody look for a phone that was in my underwear. I'm not in contact with anybody I went to high school with, but I might look up some people on Facebook and apologize. Some of them worked hard to buy the phones I stole. I still think a lot about that BlackBerry Torch 9800 and most days I wish I would have chucked that thing into a pond. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.